So let's start. Let's make this first movie. So step one, where does the process begin for making a movie? It begins with an idea. Now, I think that ideas are overemphasized in storytelling, and especially when it comes to making videos. A great idea can make for a garbage movie, and a garbage idea can make for a really great movie. A good example, talking about an airplane seat. Making a 10-minute movie about a seat on an airplane, that's not an interesting idea. If you pitch me that idea, I'd say, I don't care. Yet a 10-minute movie about an airplane seat is my most watched video I've ever made. Mediocre at best idea, but in the execution, I found my story and I found the character, me, and the experience. And I was able to communicate, share this story with an audience in a way that was compelling enough to propel that video to be my most watched video I've ever made. It wasn't the idea that got those views. It was how that idea was communicated. So based on that, if you're starting from a place of ideas are not that important, then what is their role in the process? Specifically, what role does an idea play? And for me, it's singular. Ideas are the motivation. Like I'm standing at the edge of the cliff, I want to make a movie, the idea kicks me in the back and it pushes me off that cliff. So where do ideas come from? Well, most often we draw from our own experiences. The things that you've heard, you've done, the things that someone has told you, everything you've been through in life, that's your encyclopedia. That's your wealth of knowledge from which you can draw on when you need an idea. Not all ideas are created equal. There are some really big ideas. When I think of big ideas, I think about some of the movies that I've made that maybe are about my family. I made a movie about fatherhood that's focused on my relationship with my son. I made a movie about meeting my wife all the way from when she was just my girlfriend to when we had our first child together. Those are big ideas, ideas that might exist in my head for a really long time. Those are the ideas that relate to this premeditated kind of movie. Then there are smaller ideas, or bad ideas, stupid ideas, ideas that are seemingly insignificant. And this is what we're focused on today. These are they fall into the spontaneous movies. When something strikes you and you're like, that's interesting, I'd like to turn that into a story. These are the small ideas. And so many of my YouTube videos, especially my daily vlog, are about these kind of insignificant ideas, these little moments of interestingness, something that I think about and I fixate on enough. And I'm like, you know what? If I'm thinking about that, I bet somebody else might be interested in that as well. Let me try to communicate that in a way that's fun and exciting and palatable. So not particularly exciting or interesting in their concept, but instead their value is in the way those ideas are turned into stories and shared as movies. Let's pick apart an example. All right, so this is one of my most watched videos ever that I've ever put on YouTube. This went crazy viral all over the world. This is a prime example of a really stupid idea. So my idea here, my motivation for this video was that this police officer right here is giving me a ticket for riding my bike outside of the bike lane. Like, you're supposed to be in the bike lane, I'm not in the bike lane, he's ticketing me for it. That's stupid. He shouldn't have given me the ticket, I was frustrated. That frustration, that was my idea. I want to share this frustration. I'm mad, I want to share it with the world. But a summons from a police officer is not, in itself, is not interesting enough to share. I mean, if your uncle sitting next to you at Thanksgiving dinner starts blabbing about a speeding ticket he got, no one cares. So then how do I turn that into something compelling? Well, first I had this shot of the cop giving me the ticket, and it's like, okay, this is something, there's something here. I needed to give context to it, so I put all this text on the screen, and okay, this text on the screen then brings the audience around me up to speed. They know the context of this story. They know why I got this ticket, and they know a little bit about why I'm frustrated. Okay, so then my friend Oscar and I went out. This was like, God, was this 10 years ago? We got on a bike, and I was like, I need to illustrate why it's stupid that you have to be in the bike lanes. And it's stupid because I find it unsafe to be in the bike lanes. Okay, what's the most entertaining, what's the most compelling way to illustrate my point. The most compelling way to illustrate that I should be allowed to leave the bike lanes if I need to. And it's like, well, how about no matter what, I don't leave those bike lanes? It doesn't matter what's in front of me, I'm not going to leave the bike lanes. And that's exactly what we did. I start riding my bike, explain what's going on, audience is like, okay, and boom, I crash. And then I crash again. And then I crash again, and again, and again, and again. And that is hysterical. Physical humor is really funny. So I've taken this idea, this nothing idea, and using a combination of physical humor, text on screen, really basic, really primitive filmmaking techniques, I was able to take this nothing of an idea and turn it into a meaningful enough story that however many tens of millions of people ended up watching this video, watched it. Here's another great example. To ride a snowboard around the streets of New York City behind a truck. That's not a bad idea, but that in itself is like a 5-second clip that goes viral on Twitter. That's a 15-second TikTok that gets shared. I don't care about that. I care about telling a story. So how can I take this one idea that is a legitimately good idea? How do I turn that into something more? So I'm looking at this movie, Snowboarding with the NYPD is the name of it, and I set it up by using this news clip of the mayor explaining that no cars are allowed on the street. The next shot is of my car on the street. So immediately, right off the bat, it's like, we're breaking the rules to do something really fun here. I'm inviting the audience along with me to embrace this funness. Now immediately, the interestingness of this movie goes from just the act or the stunt of being pulled behind a truck to something a little bit more dynamic. It gets into some of the thinking, some of the approach that I had to making this movie, which is like, well, they told us we're not supposed to leave our house. This is like the greatest snowstorm we've had in years. I want to embrace this storm. I want to own this city during this storm. And I want to bring that audience along. So what started as this little idea that could have been a 5-second clip, I now turn into a 3-minute movie. A 3-minute movie where I take the audience along with me through this journey of riding around this city. And then this little idea ends with me getting pulled over by the cops, and instead of them giving me a ticket, the police officers just say, be safe, have fun out there. A perfect kind of bow or punctuation mark at the end of this story. I took an idea that could have been a nothing, it could have been a clip, and you turn that idea into a story. And then my most popular video that I've ever made, a video about a first-class airplane seat. I mean, maybe it's a good idea, but if you were to tell me I want to talk to you for 10 minutes about my airplane seat, I don't think I would care. But I was fascinated. I was fascinated by this airplane seat, and I wanted to share that fascination. Again, it goes back to this idea of, if I find it interesting, if you find it interesting, chances are someone else will find it interesting too. I remember when I was sitting on this plane, I'm looking around, and all I'm seeing is interestingness everywhere. I think the little makeup compact that's built into the desk when you push the button and it pops up, that's interesting. I want to share that. The fact that I got a real menu, like a restaurant menu, that's interesting. I want to share that. So this journey, which was literally a flight, this journey became about seeking out the interestingness and communicating that interestingness through my own enthusiasm. I've never been in a plane seat like this. I was genuinely excited. I was borderline hysterical. If you had been the guy sitting next to me, you would have seen that in real life. So you're not the guy next to me, so maybe let me just do that to the camera and share this story with the world. And sure, on its surface, this story is about an airplane seat, but what this story was to me was a guy who had never experienced something like this, something I didn't even know existed. And now I get to do it. I get to experience it. So let me bring you along with me. And that was the story for me. So right now, for this movie that we're making, we need that idea. We need that interestingness that is compelling enough to you, or in my case, compelling enough to me, that I have the confidence I can turn it into a story. I can turn it into a video. I don't know the idea yet, so I think it's gonna be good to go outside, and I will literally walk around my neighborhood looking for some interestingness to turn into a movie. I'm gonna take my camera, my video camera, gonna go find some interestingness, gonna make a video. So I'm heading out onto the street to try to come up with like a bunch of ideas spontaneously for movies. And like my favorite part about New York City is that literally, this is a very literal version of this, but whenever you step outside here, you're just kind of hit in the face with stories. And I think that's true maybe for wherever you call home, but for me with New York City, this is like the ultimate of that. Okay, let me find us some stories here. Okay. First idea. My office is 20 feet. This is my block. They're building like a gigantic building right here, which means for like the next 2 years, I'm gonna be listening to them build a gigantic building right here. That's interesting. I could probably take that, I could definitely take that idea and make it compelling. And the idea wouldn't be about the construction of a building. Who cares about that? I don't. That's not interesting. But the idea that I'm gonna have like this cloud over my office, which is the noise, the incessant racket of a building being built for years to come, there's something compelling about that. There's like emotion there, there's context there of where it fits into my life, there's visuals there of a building being built. This could absolutely be a movie. Okay, let's find some more. All right, okay, here's another idea. This fancy building here, this is another like overpriced, expensive condo. But this building used to be a bodega, like a place where you go to get like a ham sandwich or a bagel in the morning. It was my favorite place. It was called New Fancy Food. And I have footage somewhere in like one of my hard drives of the day that place, New Fancy Food, closed. And they told us they were tearing the building down to put up a condo. So the idea could be like, I talk about why it was my favorite, I dig through my archives, I show myself going there as like a young Casey, and then I combine that footage with how now, instead of having like a really fun place to get a bagel every morning, we have some other overpriced condo building. That's kind of a good New York story. Okay, let's find another one. It has to do with this saw right here. All right. You hear that? Okay, these guys are using a chop saw in the middle of Broadway in Tribeca. This noise, every day there's something like this, like just a crippling noise that totally screws up all my movies. So an idea, and I've always wanted to make this movie, an idea could be making a video about how it's just impossible to record audio in New York City because there's always a noise. And that video I think would be interesting because noise isn't interesting. Two dudes on a chop saw is not interesting, but me being able to express this like struggle that I have to overcome just to make a video here and get clean audio, I think there's probably something compelling about that. So that's a movie idea right there. I'm looking for interestingness. And if it's not a chop saw, it's like a beeping, reversing school bus. The Noise movie is a good movie. All right. Okay, so for my, how many ideas have I come up with? Is that 4? That was 4, right? 3? Okay, so for my 4th idea, well, it's right here. Okay, this would make a good story. This is Billy's Bakery. This is my favorite bakery for 2 reasons. One, they've got the best chocolate icebox cake I've ever had. That's kind of a good story. And then 2, its proximity to my studio is like hundreds of feet away. So like, even if you don't care about like a restaurant review, like a bakery review, the relationship between my office being right there that I go to every day and then like this fantastic bakery being a stone's throw away, and like if I don't have any self-control, I'll just eat cake all day, every day until like I put on 15 pounds. There's interestingness there. So like, yeah, I could definitely turn this into some sort of movie. You can kind of see that as like one of my vlogs, right? There's a movie here. This is an idea. This is one of my ideas. Okay. Okay. Okay, here's another idea. This fire escape right here, this old rusty fire escape. I have a picture of me from probably 15 years ago sitting on this fire escape smoking a cigarette. That's how long ago it was, with my friends. It's an interesting story. So like there's a movie where I could fly a drone up there and show the fire escape now, flanked with these fancy buildings and all of that. Looks totally different. And then match it to the picture that I have of me sitting on that fire escape a long time ago. And like kind of envelop that image in the story of the evolution of this neighborhood over 15 years. That's interesting. Okay. As we're walking around, we walk by this building. Okay, way back in the day, my friend Nick had an office in this building. He locked himself out. He went across the street to my office and was like, Casey, help me break into my own office, I'm locked out. And I was like, of course. And as I'm going out the door of the ladder, I'm like, wait a minute, this is fascinating. I grabbed a camera and I turned that little nothing of just trying to help a friend get into his office space, turned that into a movie. Because in the moment, it was interesting to me. And if it's interesting to me, it's a safe assumption that it's gonna be interesting to someone else. I think you can find that video on my YouTube channel. Perfect, perfect, perfect. This is New York City's famous Chinatown. This is Canal Street. And this is by far the best idea of all the random ideas I just came up with. This is where the tourists come to buy counterfeit handbags. Now that in itself is interesting for a million reasons. I've always wanted to make like an in-depth video about the counterfeit handbag thing that happens here. So that's the movie I want to make. But I think the angle on it is not like exposing the counterfeit bag market. Like watch the news if you want that. I think the angle on it is going to be, I'm going to make an instructional film shot on this camera, on this phone. And it's going to be an instructional film teaching people how to buy a counterfeit bag when they come to New York City. That's a great idea. Okay, so what that was me really trying to illustrate and reinforce this idea that ideas are overemphasized as the part of the process for making movies. We just walked around my block. We walked out the front door, and I was searching for interestingness. And I came up with 5 ideas, and I can't promise that any of those 5 ideas would have been the best movie I've ever made, but there's definitely a movie there. And to try to like break down interestingness, what that means, there's the surface level. So let's talk about the first idea I had outside, which is the construction site next door that's wrecking all my audio. On the surface, that's a construction site that makes a lot of noise. Interestingness, not a whole lot of it there. But as I explain that is what's interrupting me from doing my process. That is the thing that's standing between me and making my movies. That's the thing between me and work. That's a universal idea. That's an idea that whether you've ever made a movie or you've ever done anything that requires concentration, you've been interrupted, you can empathize with that idea. Okay, let me keep going. When we walked down the alley, and I pointed up at the window and I said, I've got this old picture of me sitting on that fire escape. You've never been to that alley? No one has. No one cares about a fire escape, but nostalgia and memories and thinking back on times that you're fond of, this is a general universal idea. It's a fire escape, but because of that fire escape, the motive was there. The motive was created to tell a story about my past, about my youth. Okay, then the story that I really do want to make, the counterfeit bag sales that take place in New York City's Chinatown. I think it's fascinating. When I was a little kid, my parents would take us on a family vacation every other year to New York. You'd always see like the fake Rolexes and the fake handbags, and I was always like, I'm seeing a crime right now. And you live here and you realize like it's not such a big deal. So that is a fascinating story. That's the story that I want to make for our sample video. And that's going to be the underlying story that enables me to walk you through my entire process of making a movie that has next to zero forethought, next to zero considerations. An idea that just occurred to me like when we walked down on Canal Street and I saw the handbags and I was like, yes, this is what I want to make. I want to make this right now. With that, I want to end this lesson by challenging you. Walk outside, go in your basement, go sit in your car, go down the street. I don't know, like embrace your environment and try to seek out a handful of ideas. Do it the way that I did it. You don't need to live in New York for that to work. Find interestingness in your own life and then pick one of those moments of interestingness, and that's gonna be the thing that you're gonna make your spontaneous video about. All right, so that's the homework, and when you come back in our next lesson, we're gonna actually pick up the camera and begin the production. It's a weird word, because I think I'm gonna make this on my cell phone, but we're gonna begin the production of our spontaneous movies.